Welcome to The Sober Unicorn. We are a gay hosted, all-inclusive podcast about sobriety and addiction recovery for the LGBT plus community and all of our allies. I am your host, Holden, and thank you for joining us today. Hey everybody, it's Holden here again with The Sober Unicorn. I hope everybody's having a fabulous day. Today we are joined by a guest that I met also, just like a few others, at the Big D Roundup in Dallas, Texas. We got the pleasure to get to know each other and just kind of exchange information, and we've stayed in contact since then. So today we are being joined by Trey. How are you, Trey?
I'm peachy keen on this
Yeah,
Saturday
well,
morning.
I know it's been a crazy Saturday with, I mean, how's the weather where you're at?
Um, ooh, I am, let's just say I'm grateful that I have a pretty good AC in my car.
My AC is going out in my vehicle. She's a little old. But yeah, it's been like 109 degrees, 108 degrees here in Texas. It's been pretty brutal for a big girl over here. Um, so why don't you tell everybody kind of a little bit about yourself, like, and how long you've been sober and what your like drug of choice was?
Nice. So, I am Trey. I self-identify as an alcoholic. My sobriety date is March 15th, 2019.
Oh, so you've been sober, so 3 years.
Yeah,
That's a long time. Congratulations.
thank you. I had a little bit to do with it. Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Just a skosh. I used to tell people, and all of my spiritual pride, oh, I had nothing to do with this. It was all God. And then I was too delusional to really grasp what that meant.
I mean, it does, like, don't get me wrong. I mean, some of us depend on a higher power to get us through a lot of it, but ultimately, you're the one that walks into a room or whatever program that, if any program that you work at all. Um, so you're the one that chose to go on a journey of recovery, and so I mean, that you have a lot to do with it. You have to give yourself a little bit of credit.
Yeah, I think you may be right. The flip side of humility is confidence.
Yes, and we know as alcoholics, most of us are overly confident, overly egotistical. I mean, at
Yeah,
least I was.
I mean, I definitely was, but for me, I guess the difference of attitude was the flip side of humility is confidence. The flip side of narcissism is shame.
I haven't thought about it that way. That's a good food for thought.
Yeah, a nice little nugget.
I love nuggets. I love me some golden nuggets. So kind of so people can get to know and gauge like who you are. Why don't you give everybody like how it was pre-sobriety? What finally was that final decision to go into recovery, and how's your recovery journey been?
It's there's been a lot of growth. That's an inside joke that I have with myself because I was a little unsure about the relationship I was getting into, and I didn't want to say it was going to be good or it was going to be bad. But whatever happens, there's going to be a lot of growth. And whenever I normally share my story, people like me to get pretty early on. So I guess we'll start with me being born.
That's real early on.
um, so for me, I'll start pretty close to there, but I'll catch up pretty quick. I don't know if any of the listeners have had this experience, but like I remember my first moment of consciousness. Like I was reaching up for and you can't see my hand language right now, but I was reaching up to this thing that was on the ceiling and I was looking at my hand and I was like, what is that? And then I looked down my arm and then realized that it was my arm and it was connected to my body and that's me. And I was
Interesting.
like, oh, okay. Okay, we have a body. We're conscious now. Cool. And then maybe I'm going to say 3 or 4 years after that, I was outside playing in the woods. It'll all make sense, I promise.
I was gonna say
I was
who randomly just plays in the woods.
well, I was kind of like a good old boy. I went like fishing and stuff as a kid. I was outside in nature a lot, and I had some. I think I was maybe like 7 or 8, and I had neighborhood kid friends, and some were 7 or 8, and some were like 11 or 13. And I had this moment where we were out in the woods and I realized that there's spiders out here and I could die. And I was like, oh, and like that, the fear of just being that's the moment where I realized that thing came in.
So just fear.
Fear, yeah. But it's like the fear that like I'm out of place and I'm not comfortable. None of this makes sense. I'm in danger. All of that was once that came in, I don't really ever remember a point of it leaving until I started using substances.
And how old were you when like the substance use started?
That was well, I smoked my first cigarette at 8.
That's
With
young.
okay, yeah. I mean, I didn't pick those back up until I was 16, but really 15 is where it started for me because I was introduced to like really cheap weed. But I was like, there's like really shitty weed. It had like branches in it.
That's the weed that I remember from back in the day. It's like you just buy the Reggie, a $10 sack was like I don't know how many gram. I mean the weed nowadays is like $70 a gram, and you're like, what is going on here?
yeah, they made it a lot stronger, and I began to experiment with that over time, and I have a history of trying a substance. I'm introduced to the lower quality stuff, and then like as like a seeking missile, I would always find stronger and stronger and stronger until I would get to a place where, oh, this is awful now, and I don't want to do this anymore. So there was the smoking weed. Um, a note in the story where there was kind of a shift in attitude was I uh, the me and my best friend at the time swapped V cards,
Okay.
but he had a boyfriend, right? Okay. And then I didn't feel bad, but I knew that I should.
I mean, like, at that age, because how old were you at this point?
15.
Okay, so that's roughly when I lost mine, and it's like you feel bad in a way, but then you don't, because like, well, we're only 15. Like, what relationship's gonna last at this point?
Yeah, I mean there is that. I just knew that something was supposed to be going on and it wasn't. I and earlier where y'all heard me talking about God, I had been to a bunch of different churches. There's a really big church around here, and the before coming into recovery, the last church that I went to, um, the last day I was like, I'm never going to church again was whenever they lost their tax write-offs because they told the congregation to vote for political officials that would make laws to disallow LGBTQ teachers.
Oh dang.
Not the subject, just them being a part of our queer community.
And that's insane, especially of course I don't want to go into politics, but any congregation to tell to any preacher to tell the congregation who to vote for, I think is not okay.
I'm in that same boat. It's also illegal, and they lost their tax deductions because of separation of church and state. And that's really when I started studying the Bible to tell Christians how they were wrong, which is wildly inappropriate to do. I can admit that now, but whenever I was like a young, hurt, like queer kid, and I didn't really have a good grasp of my sexuality, I was just very defensive of it. Um, that's where that's where that took me. So I didn't trust religion to help me with my problems. I didn't trust therapists or psychiatrists. And I saw a psychiatrist and I told her I smoked weed and spice once, and that was a lie. And she yelled at my dad to she yelled at my dad in a hallway in between her office and her lobby that she doesn't treat drug addicts. And I was 15.
I don't, to me personally, I don't. Okay, you know what? I won't even go to that subject. It's weed. I understand, don't be wrong, the realm of sobriety. I don't think weed is okay, but I don't judge anybody's program. But at the end of the day, it's not like we're 15 and snorting crack.
Yeah, right? Like, come on. I didn't even get to the harder stuff till like several years later.
Exactly. It's like weed at that point. Everybody I think was smoking weed at 15, 16 years old.
Yeah, out of Coke cans with like little holes punched in it.
It was tampon wrappers for me. Like it wasn't the plastic, they were paper. Because of course, being a little queer kid, I had nothing but female friends.
Yeah.
So, and of course, we were poor, so we only bought like the 2 liter sodas from the 99-cent store. We didn't have cans. But so when did of course, you were like you said, 15, smoking weed, spice. When did the alcohol come into play?
That came into play very, very, very early on for me. I remember my dad set me down and he had all of the kinds of alcohols in front of me, and his goal was to teach me how to drink so I don't look like uncool in front of other people.
I mean that's Father of the Year award. I mean, no judgment to your dad, but
Well, I did learn that the technical term for that is abuse. So
I mean it's not funny, but I think as a people in recovery, we have to find humor and some trauma that we went through in our past in order to cope with it and move forward and forgive it. You know what I mean?
oh yeah, for sure. I like to say that I put the fun in funeral.
I'm not going to say anything about the funeral business because that is the business I am careered in. So I will not up talk that or down talk that industry.
Yeah, nice. That's still super cool, by the way.
Thank you. So your dad taught you to drink liquor,
Hmm.
and I guess is at this moment is when you found out that it was never enough.
That happened later for me. The first time I really did start drinking was whenever I was doing plays and I was doing plays with one of my friends, and he had already started drinking, and we sampled like little bitty pieces of alcohol from his parents' liquor cabinet. And our friend had said, if you kiss him, I'll give him a ride home. So one of the first times that I'd ever kissed a dude was one of my straight friends, and it was a Spider-Man kiss. It was very ungraceful, but like that was a pretty magical moment of I can be who I am. There's like a connection that I'm getting to see greater inside myself. I had a hormone disorder, so my development of sexuality was very stifled. So that experience, I was like, wow, I really want to do this again and again, but I'm 16.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept smoking weed to bide the time because being sober was physically painful most of the time. Then I so there's this really cute guy, and he would come over to my apartment now every now and again, and I said, "Wow, I was so stoned yesterday." And I'd been smoking a lot around him, and he was like, "You were stoned at all?" And then that's whenever I realized that he only knew me as a person that was totally blitzed all the time and barely functional, and my ego could not handle it. That's whenever I started drinking as regularly as I could.
You know what's insane is I was maybe like 22 dating a guy that was a major pothead. And on a Sunday we hung out and like his personality was so off. Like I was like could not cope with it. I was like, how much weed did you smoke for me to like not want to deal with your ass? And Sundays was the days he stayed sober because apparently every time he had been caught legally with weed possession, it was on a Sunday. So he's like, no, I'm totally sober on Sundays. I was like, how insane is it to like the person high as hell, but when they're sober and just their normal individual person, I could not deal. But reversing back to the gay butthole sex, and I'm kidding. Um, so it seems that you lost your virginity pre having a kiss.
There was kissing involved with that.
Okay. Okay. So the other kiss with the straight guy was a lot more, I guess, intimate and a little bit more freeing to your sexuality.
Yes, because I was not out whenever I was 15. That caused a pretty big rift because I said, I don't know if this is who or how I am. I just know that I care about you a lot. So I'm gonna try it. And
Mm-hmm.
then the kiss that happened with that straight friend was in front of a group of people. I think that's really where the that's where that shift came from, is that it was okay in front of other people, and I had a lot of internalized shame and stigma that I wasn't fully aware of.
And did you kind of tie, because like you said, you were drunk and most likely high, did you kind of tie the freedom that you felt to the to being drunk or high at the same time?
I did, yes. Very insightful. I was actually scared to start drinking because I had heard that parts of you come out whenever you're drinking, and I was terrified of becoming known as a person.
Which is crazy. I mean, to think about now that, I mean, of course, now that we're out and open to better sexuality, it's kind of crazy to think that in our more adolescent years that we were so scared to be our true selves. And now that we're out and becoming our true self, it's like, shit, we live out loud, we scream it from the rooftop, and we don't give a shit. Who knows? So at what point did you realize the drinking was out of control to the point where you're like, holy crap, I need to get this under control, like get a grasp on it?
The last day that I drank, yeah,
And what
I
happened
had,
that night?
oh girl. So I did have some red flags pop up that I wasn't conscious of being red flags, where I would tell my friends, I don't like what happens when I drink anymore, but I like what happens whenever I turn the cap off and I pour the shot. Like, I feel like I can breathe, my shoulders go down, but then things just were getting more and more out of control with my drinking. My friends didn't want to be around me. And then what had happened was I I told somebody I'm only gonna have one drink, but take my car keys so I don't ruin my life. And I chugged half a fifth in about an hour.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. That was a lot. I was like, I'm insert my last name. I'm made for substances.
That is fully understandable. Like my prior last name, never mind, we won't go there. But so your last night, you finally were like, holy crap, I need to get sober. So
Well, I woke up the next day with my friend's pants put on me backwards, and she told me that I ran around naked in a parking lot where there's usually police.
I mean, I don't know if at that moment you would have minded being put in cuffs,
Definitely not.
because I know I enjoy it. No. Um, which is insanity to think about when you are, for something to drink, you're willing to put your entire livelihood at risk. Because I mean, you were how old at this point? Well, 3 years, you're 27 now, so 24.
I was 23.
23. And did you have a career already set in motion at this point?
I I did not. I realized whenever I went to school for a STEM education certificate, which was biology, chemistry double major, and then a STEM education certificate. And I realized that I was spinning too many plates in life, and I was miserable. I just couldn't quite find uh, purpose or happiness in everyday life. And I knew that I needed to figure out who and how I was to be able to enjoy uh, life. So I stepped out from college, and
It's crazy how many alcoholics that I've known that in active addiction, they were like in school biochemistry and like PhDs, and I'm just like, here I am sober, struggling with microbiology.
that's hard stuff.
It is. It's very difficult. It's hell on earth. So you get sober, or you choose to get sober, and how did the first, like, I would say, let's say the first 90 days, because I know the first 90 days is very, very difficult for most people. So how did that look? How did you get through that?
My first 90 days. So for me, there's a difference between genuinely seeking recovery versus genuinely seeking not having to deal with consequences. And the first, because my drugs of no choice were alcohol and methamphetamine.
You're listening to The Sober Unicorn. We'll be right back after this short break. This episode is brought to you by Von Shine Creatives at handmadeandgreat.com. Von Shine Creatives is a sober-owned business featuring finely crafted goat's milk and vegan soaps. Treat yourself or someone you love today. Take $5 off of $25 on all your purchases site-wide, and remember, it's always free shipping. Use the coupon code SOBER, which helps support Von Shine Creatives and the Sober Unicorn podcast all at once. Link and coupon code will be in the bio. Now back to our episode.
So the first time trying to avoid consequences for my actions, and I became a missing persons in Chattanooga for about a month, and after 40 days of treatment in a crisis center, I ended up back where I'm currently living. And I had using nightmares every night. They were very vivid. I was experiencing paranoia, delusions, hearing people's voices. Um, I was hearing people's thoughts about me and voices in my own head. They were all negative. And then one day, I managed to cobble together about 4 months. And then my mind goes, I haven't done meth in 4 months. I should have a drink.
I mean, no better way to celebrate, I guess. No.
Perfectly reasonable. And then to pick up where we left off, the second time I came in, I realized that like, oh, I'm gonna die. Like I picked up using again. I started drinking again. I ended up using intravenously, even though I said I wasn't going to. And I kept drawing lines in the sand and crossing them repeatedly. And then I finally had that moment where I realized something had to change and I really had to try recovery.
And that's when you moved forward into, like you said, there's a difference between trying to avoid consequences to actually seeking out recovery.
Yeah.
So, how, since entering recovery, how has your life changed and benefited?
I must admit, it was very difficult at first. And I don't want to dissuade anybody from recovery, but not having those buffers is really hard. But what starts to happen, and I needed the experience of it being hard and then getting through it to realize that recovery can work and function even when life is hard, because life is going to get hard, and there's more surety in it now than there was whenever I was just like, oh, I guess I'm doing recovery now. I don't really know what's going on. Bad things are going to happen, and I don't know how it's going to work or what I'm going to do. And now I'm in a position where I have a partner that I absolutely love to pieces. I have friends that actually know who I am, and I had a history of where I would get a part of a friend group, and then this thought would come that, like, if they get to know me, then they're going to hate me as much as I hate myself, and I need to leave. And I don't have to do that anymore. And I don't.
And you have people that actually are around you that like you for who you are rather than who they think you are because of you being on substance. And most of the time when we were on substance, we acted like total, complete different individuals because we were trying to fit into the friend group or the using group that we were with at the time.
Yes. Brene Brown talks about how the opposite of fitting in is belonging. And fitting in, we have to shave off pieces of who we are to be able to acclimate. And I came to see that I couldn't experience connection or love because I wasn't letting people see me for who I really am.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And I think that's why in recovery, we lose so many friends from our prior life just because when we do change and evolve and actually just become our authentic self, we no longer fitting in to those friend groups and we no longer belong because for one we never belonged in the first place. We were just, as you said, fitting in. And now with these connections that we meet in recovery at these events and at these and parties that we all have, um, it's you're no longer now fitting into this group. You now belong a part of a group and you feel safe and authentic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So talking about hard things, being gay. We love things very hard. No. So I know that in your recovery, like you said, you were seeing you have a partner, and I know during that time that you had to endure some very rough news. And of course, stay recovered, not relapse due to the news. And so, can you share with everybody what that news was and how that changed your recovery and your relationship?
Yes. So a year into me and my partner's relationship, he was diagnosed with stage 3 colorectal cancer, and then a year later, he um, he was declared cancer free after having surgery, and then 2 months later, after that, he went for a scan, and they found 4 thumb-sized tumors in his liver.
So, what stage is he currently at?
Because of the spread, stage 4.
Okay. So, of course, coming down with this news is very rough for anybody, whether they're in recovery or not. So, what did you have to do to make sure that you did not go back out once hearing this news?
In the literature that I use, my foundation of recovery is 12 step, and something that comes to mind frequently is our very lives as ex problem drinkers depends on our constant thought of others and how we may meet their needs. So that and um, connection to a sponsor, a very thorough and um, precise prayer life, which is it's kind of funny for me to think about now because of my history with religion and God and prayer. I was so put off to all of it, and now I know that's what's keeping me going. I know that I couldn't do this alone, and not that this is the only way for recovery to happen, but I know that this is working for me.
Yeah, no, most definitely. And I think beyond just you and your partner coping with the news, there has to be major changes in a relationship. I think when people are diagnosed with anything, any long-term illness, they have to change the way their habits are with each other. And sometimes due to medication, sexual drive can be different. Some days they're sick, some days they feel great. So how has your and your partner's intimacy changed for the better, and what is it like, what did it look like versus what it looks like now?
In the beginning, we were both high drive people, which was a whole lot of fun. Um, we had a lot of fun together, and we were sexual and intimate a lot together. And then as the diagnosis changed, and as the results of that diagnosis changed, some of the experiences sexually became painful, and so we had to grow into people that were able to find intimacy without sexual interaction.
And how did you find that? I mean, like, because some of the listeners could be going through the same thing, or um, dealing with the age gap relationship or the high drive, low drive. So, I mean, how did you rediscover that intimacy?
I have people that I am very close with, and so I can share all of the details with pretty candidly. And two of them, one of them is working to be a therapist, one of them is working to be a counselor. And whenever I was talking about what was going on, they brought to mind they had studied what's known as sensate focus. Is really what was going on is me being a high drive person, there were some growing pains. So he instructed me. He was like, just keep trying, and if I'm not in the mood or if it's not going to work, then we'll just shut it down. I was like, okay. So we tried that. For me, I'm very sensitive, so rejection can be very difficult. And we also realized one of the reasons why he was shutting down was because anytime I initiated sexual and physical intimacy, in both of our minds, we were going for sexual intimacy, and that kind of pressure, it snaps people out of the mood. You can be aroused or you can be anxious, and so if you're aroused, you can't be if you're anxious, you can't be sexually aroused. And the practice of sensate focus I encourage other people, even if they aren't experiencing this, but if they do experience difficulty with stress and pressure for performance, I personally have really bad performance anxiety. That's one of the reasons why I used methamphetamine. It made me feel good and sexy and beautiful, wanted, and powerful. And so I didn't have all of that performance anxiety because I just knew that I was good. And sensate focus, the practice, there's 6 different steps, and I don't know if we'll have time to really get into it, but it encourages like non-genital touching. It encourages you to just like be naked together and like rub on each other's bodies, whether it's like shoulders, hands, feet, chest, but don't do anything sexual at first. And if anybody starts getting like nervous or uncomfortable, then you stop. And then you stair step towards having more intimacy. So our practice, we shortened it because we're both alcoholics. So going through the whole thing would be very beneficial. But really, the biggest difference came about of just having the conversation about sensate focus. And even if we are being intimate, it doesn't have to be sexual. And if something starts being sexual and it becomes uncomfortable, we can just shut it down. And then that's fine. So it was a tool to encourage the communication. And that's really where I see the intimacy coming from.
So I think the growth in that for you, especially since you're partnered, is incredible. Because me, I'm a single bitch. So if anybody wants to holler, say hey. Um,
Hey.
and th- I kind of dealt with the same thing with sexual anxiety, with being more on the bottom side where you have to make sure everything's prepped, ready to go, perfect, especially with hookups and stuff like that. And you deal with flakiness. And so I use methamphetamine as a way to starve myself essentially to consistently be ready and to be able to handle any certain size of anything that anybody had. And now that I'm sober, finding that intimacy with somebody is actually so difficult because nowadays I don't crave the sexual contact like most people want. I crave just being held by that person. I crave just being touched. Um, so I think it's great that you were able to find this. I don't know if I would call it a program, the Sensei Focus, or just kind of a journey, but you have somebody that due to circumstances you're able to grow with that, and it probably benefited your relationship for the fact of now the relationship is not strictly sexual, it's not strictly just intimate and sexual, it's now just being there present with that person, and just the physical presence of you being there is intimate enough, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do like to. We also, I started calling them HR meetings, but he hates HR. So, but every now and again, if we have something like coming up, there's kind of a rift. Every now and again, we'll just have a sit down and check in with each other. And um, every now and again, I'll just be like, hey, can we just have some like naked time together? Just like we're not wearing any clothes, we're just like holding each other, nothing sexual, just I just want to have that kind of closeness and intimacy. And I used to have those things completely intertwined. And the he has he has some issues with like worrying about me personally and my experience of going through this with him. But the truth is that I wouldn't be the person that he needed me to be, or I needed me to be, or anyone else needed me to be without having the trials and learning, okay, what is the difference between sexual intimacy and physical intimacy? How do you show up for other people? How do you ask questions? What's your attitude? Can you do that? Can you set yourself aside to show up for somebody in the way that they need versus the way that I want? And that practice has allowed me to show up in all of my other relationships in a much healthier and mature fashion.
Yeah, I think it's kind of important to know that like sexuality, like sex in general, sex um relieves a physical need that we have as humans when it comes to desires, but intimacy fuels what the soul and the mind needs, which is just the love and presence and appreciation of another person. And like you said, you don't have to do anything sexual, just being there, present with your partner, just touching each other. People don't realize that. I think it was BuzzFeed years ago did this test where they had two partners cuddle naked, like fully nude, never knew each other. And the first, of course, few minutes was awkward because they're like, I don't know this person and I'm cuddled up with them naked.
Yeah.
But over the course of, I think it was like 20 or 30 minutes that they were forced to do this, like these people opened up about their personal life, about their struggles, and like by the end of it, both parties were like they didn't realize just being touched by somebody intimately, like not sexually, because they were being seen as a human rather than as a sexual object, and they didn't realize how much of an impact that would make. And I think like you, I mean, well, me, I mean, I'll speak for myself, but yeah, it's like sometimes I just want to be looked at as somebody that could just be there for the person physically rather than just being this like sexual object. Although sometimes the other side of it is is fun. I mean, we all have our moments, but yeah, I mean, intimacy is so important, especially with partnership, especially when I think in recovery, we we a lot of us have trauma from the past, which has caused us to use and abuse. And finding that partner, especially if they're in recovery as well, y'all are both working a recovery, working through recovery, and you both need to show each other that you're just there for them as a person and not strictly for them because they're physically attractive, sexually attractive, stuff like that. So I think that that's massively important.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of platonic affection as well. So I'm a big hugger with my friends, and I have two friends that one's a straight dude and then one's a gay dude, and we kiss each other on the cheeks. Like I love that stuff. I think I don't think platonic physical affection and non-sexual intimacy are given enough credit in our society.
Exactly, exactly. So before we get towards the end of the episode, is there anything that you haven't shared that you would like to share with everybody? Dramatic pause. No.
Yeah, I like to think about those kinds of things. Um, One thing that I didn't know about getting into recovery is that I would be wrong about a lot of things, and that I was going to make a lot of mistakes, and that's okay as long as my attitude is generally and generally and genuinely striving to become a better version of myself. Eventually, when I cause harm, I'll be in a position to do something about it. And then that's way better than pre-recovery where I wasn't even aware of the harm that I was causing. And if I did cause it, you deserved it. So like it's okay to be wrong, it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to be a human being because I really thought I needed to be God and I couldn't cut myself any slack and I have to be perfect and I don't. I'm good
Yeah, I
enough.
mean, it's okay not to be perfect. And I think I recently heard something that I'd love to hear. It was because especially at work, I deal with a lot of craziness. And it's would you rather be right or would you rather be kind? There's so many points in our
Mm.
life that even though we know we're right, it's okay to just shut up and just
Yeah.
like you proving your rightness and making that other individual feel less than just for you to get your point across. Like, what does that do for you? Especially because most of the things we're going to argue about are so petty and bullshit. Like, it has nothing to do with like real, actual like decisions that are going to have any type of impact on anything. So it's like sometimes it's okay just to be quiet and just be kind to that person and just show love and show appreciation rather than making them feel like they're a fucking idiot.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a one of the principles um, is like ooh, excuse me, we tried to convince ourselves with by engaging in wordy arguments and reading wordy books. And once I started seeing that whenever I was arguing with somebody, I was really just trying to convince myself that I was right, not them. then what I was doing was useless. So once I'm convinced of things, like I don't need to argue about it. If somebody comes to me for help and they're curious about something, then that's whenever I'm in a position to help. But just getting in an argument, air quotes, trying to change someone's mind for the better, I'm really just trying to tell myself that I'm correct, and it's not helpful.
Exactly. So, what would you tell the LGBTQIA LMNOP individual that is still struggling right now?
There's going to be things about yourself that you may not like right now, but it's completely possible for you to learn to love them. And the way that I learned how to love other people and to love myself was through my relationships with others. The acceptance that I have of myself today, there is room for growth, comes from other people showing me that I'm worthy of love. But for me to have that experience and for you to have that experience, you have to be who you are, and all of its glory and all of its mistakes and all of its accidents and all of its rough spots. That's how I can experience love and acceptance through other people. And that's totally possible for you too, even if you don't believe it right now.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Trey, for joining us today.
Yes, I'm so glad that I saw your post and I was like, I'll do it. I'll do it.
Well, I hope you have a wonderful day, and eventually we'll probably have you back on here again, okay?
Wonderful. Yeah, I'll have to come down to where you are and spend some time.
Yes, come to Dallas. Well, I'm not in Dallas. So avoid Dallas. Come to Fort Worth.
I'll just drive
Dallas,
up and around.
Dallas is full of monkeypox right now.
Oh, okay.
All right, talk to you soon. Thank you again for listening to today's episode. Hit that follow button to be notified about new episodes every week. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can find us on Instagram at The Sober Unicorn Podcast or on our website at thesoberunicornpodcast.com. There you will find our episodes as well as our very own sober-owned shop featuring products from small businesses that are sober-owned. And remember everyone, don't be normal, be a unicorn, but better yet, be a sober unicorn.